Well, we're entering the property and evidence building of the Garden Grove Police Department, and as you can see, there are literally thousands of pieces of evidence that have to be processed.
Bob Romaine is a cold case detective with the Garden Grove Police Department, and this is where he begins his day, among stacks of boxes full of old evidence.
This is one of the first steps in a cold case. We come out and find the case with the evidence and see what really is there, because you need to physically look at the evidence.
In 2001, Romaine pulls evidence on Kiva Bible, found murdered 15 years earlier.
This is where all the biological evidence is kept.
Of immediate interest, an evidence item kept in cold storage.
So it doesn't degrade. There were some hairs. I can't tell you how many right now, but I know that there was hairs.
Human hairs, collected at the crime scene more than a decade earlier.
But as you can see,
for Romaine, it represents perhaps his best chance to solve a case that began under a streetlight in a dark corner of Garden Grove, California.
As I pulled up, I pulled down Lucille Street, and right in the middle of the street was a female laying down.
John Keeley is a street cop with Garden Grove. At a little after 2 a.m., he finds 28-year-old Kiva Bible face down in the middle of the road. Keeley finds no witnesses, no obvious evidence indicating how or why a young woman might have found herself dead. Bible's body is zipped into a coroner's bag and sent to the morgue for autopsy.
At the crime scene, the body was pretty much fully clothed. And in further examination of it, we saw that the jacket itself was fully zipped up and covering the upper chest portion of her body. Upon removing of the jacket, we then observed here that she had multiple stab wounds in the upper chest. Again, the jacket itself had no defects. It had no tears. It had no punctures within it, which again indicated to us that she had been redressed following these injuries that she had sustained.
Using clear tape, Gammy goes over Kiva's clothing and body, looking for hairs, threads, or carpet fibers, anything that might have been left by her killer. Gammy collects more than 200 hairs, packages each one, and then waits for detectives to begin pulling suspects off the streets.
Kiva, she had probably a $200 a day habit for heroin and cocaine, and so did most of the girls working this part of town.
In 1986, Sergeant Scott Watson works vice for the Garden Grove Police. He knows Kiva Bible and knows her habits.
She came out here and made enough to go get drugs, and off she'd go to get drugs to support her habit.
Watson cruises the streets, asking his sources what they know about Bible and how she wound up dead.
The night she was killed, there was two different we found that said, hey, there was this guy in this type of car that's looking for her because he said he wanted to kill her.
Detectives go back to the streets, pressing sources about the supposed hit. What they find is a theory of murder that gets less reliable each time it's retold.
When you get down to it and you start hitting them up, it's because they heard from this guy, and this guy heard from this guy, and this guy heard. And by the time you get to how the thing started, it was nothing like what you got.
Lubers and his alleged hitman fade as possible suspects. And Kiva Bible's case finds its way to the Orange County evidence room and into the cold files, where it sits for 15 years.
This is what we call a tape lift. We use 3-inch wide sticky tape, and if we want to collect trace evidence from the surface of, say, clothing, what we'll do is we'll take this tape, lay it on the clothing, and pull it off.
Penny Lafferty is a trace evidence analyst. In 2001, she receives more than 200 hairs. This is a hair similar to the one found on the victim's sock. The hair's shape tells Lafferty where it came from on the human body.
It has a wide portion in the center, and it comes to a very tapered tip. That indicates to me that it isn't a body, what I call a body limb hair, and it is very, very tiny. So that, to me, is descriptive of either an eyebrow or potentially an eyelash hair.
Lafferty forwards her eyelash, along with several other human hairs, to DNA analyst Mary Hong. Hong is able to extract a DNA profile from 5 of the hairs. All match the victim, Kiva Bible. All that is save one.
One hair produced a DNA profile that was from a male, and that profile I was able to enter into the database.
The profile is run against more than 250,000 felony offenders in the state's DNA database. Within a few days, the database spits back a match. The eyelash belongs to an ex-con named James Suknich.
Why do we have something that links you to this woman? Okay, there's a reason for it. Tell me why you were linked to this woman.
On December 6th, cold case detectives sit down with Suknich and ask him about Kiva Bible.
Could be sex. Could be a lot of different things. I don't know.
Well, tell me about it. Why do you think it could be sex?
Because I had sex with a lot of women back then.
We have found some physical evidence on this case that's very interesting.
Detectives confront Suknich with the DNA evidence that connects him to Kiva Bible. Suddenly, Suknich remembers Bible and the night they spent together in a drug house in Garden Grove.
He was using drugs, cocaine, quite heavily, and was in another part of the house when he heard some commotion.
There was all kinds of scuffling going on, and I was just too afraid to go out. And after it all quieted down, that's when I went out.
He came out, he saw Kiva naked, and these 2 guys that he called Steve and Alan. Kiva was stabbed on the floor, and that at that time they forced him to help clean her up.
And Steve just looked at me and said, "You better help, or else."
And since he placed himself at the scene, and it told me that he probably had more involvement in this than he was actually saying.
Cold case detectives believe Suknich to be their killer. A month after the initial interview, detectives ask him to travel to California and help them find the mysterious Steve and Alan. Once there, they turn up the heat.
You had more involvement in this than you're saying.
In California, Suknich once again changes his story. Now there are 3 men in the drug house: Steve, Alan, and a dope dealer Suknich calls the Stranger.
And when I walked out and saw that, he pulled a gun. He said, this guy.
The stranger?
The stranger.
Okay.
And he said, "Help clean up or else."
And, you know, he's an angry guy, the Stranger, and he wants his money back, and he's ordering, kind of orchestrating Steve and Alan as these kind of fools, these lackeys, to do what his bidding with Kiva.
And we have this Alan who we can't find anywhere. We have Steve who lives there, who doesn't exist. And we have a stranger. And this stranger, when this is all done, pulls a gun and forces you, okay, now you help clean up, or else. Wait a minute, they just stabbed a girl. Why would he pull a gun on you and threaten you with a gun when a gun's going to make noise? Does that make sense to you?
Can't hear it very loud on the tape, but you can barely make it out where he says, "I didn't think of it that way."
There is no stranger. If anybody's a stranger, it was me.
Right.
And at that point, he admitted he was the stranger, there was no stranger, and then he started going into the story at that point.
Suknich finally gets down to something close to the truth.
What I wanted to know was, when am I going to get my money back?
According to the suspect, Kiva Bible stole drugs from him and his friends, something that angered Suknich, who decided to teach her a lesson.
How many times did you hit her?
Twice.
Where?
The back.
Who hit her in the head? Okay.
Despite all the stories and all the characters Suknich brings into his conversations with police, he and he alone is charged with murder.
That says it all right there.
On May 3rd, 2005, James Suknich is convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. Kiva Bible's evidence is pulled from the cold files. Her case solved. Her murder book closed forever.